guys, welcome to Bible Breakdown. We're doing Isaiah chapter 36. This chapter is titled Sennacherib's Invasion. So we have a good amount to unpack here for verses 1 to 3. I wrote that we reflect on the damage that Assyria has done to Judah because, as we know, they've been attacking Judah for as long as we can remember. I also wrote, then we see Assyria's king send a spokesman to Jerusalem by their main water supply. As he stands there, 3 of King Hezekiah's government officials come out. So let's just clarify some people here. Sennacherib is the king of Assyria, and he sends a spokesman that doesn't have a name and an army to Jerusalem. So like I said, they stand by the main water supply, and the people that come out on behalf of Judah are 3 different people. So it's Eliakim, and he is the one who is in charge of the palace. Shebna, and he is the court secretary. And Joah, he is the court historian. We know Assyria and Judah are not cool, they're not friends. So them meeting up like this just means trouble. Now moving on to verse 4 to 6, I wrote that here the spokesman is using a tactic of Satan. He's speaking the truth, but not for the glory of God. He's trying to bring them despair. So to sum up verses 4 to 6, the spokesman is basically asking Judah, who are they putting their trust in? So in part of verse 5 and verse 6, it says, who are you now relying on that you have rebelled against me? Look, you are relying on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff that will pierce the hand of anyone who grabs it and leans on it. This is how Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who rely on him. So like I said, they're speaking truth because it's like, why are you relying on Egypt? But they're not saying it as like, you should rely on God instead because God is like all powerful and he's the only one that can save you. No, they mention that because they're trying to say like, you don't stand a chance. Then going to verse 7, I wrote that the spokesman is trying to make them doubt the power of God and if he's actually able to help them. So the spokesman is trying to kind of beat them to the punch of like them trying to vouch for themselves like, hey, we don't rely on Egypt anymore, we rely on the Lord. And he responds with, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you are to worship at this altar? So there I feel like he's trying to say like God is limited because there's not much power that's coming from him to the people. And the reason why he's doing all this stuff is from verse 8 and 9. So I wrote, he's trying to put fear in them so that they'll back down and surrender and basically calls them weak. In verses 8 and 9, it might seem like he's trying to help them, but he's actually taunting them saying, hey, we're going to give you 2,000 horses. If you can supply them with riders, you're still not going to beat us. Going to verse 10, it says, have I attacked the land to destroy it without the Lord's approval? The Lord said to me, attack this land and destroy it. So for that verse, I wrote that the spokesman is trying to make it seem like he's being sent from God. And God is the one guiding Assyria to do all this destruction. Now let me backtrack because that is essentially true. If we go back to the beginning of this book, you'll see like God is telling these people to go after Judah and he picks Assyria to do the judgment for him. But the main thing is that their heart is in the wrong place. So they're doing it with the intention of evil, where God is doing it with the intention of restoration and bringing his people back to him. So that's where the spokesman is kind of twisting God's words, because although God did send them to provide the judgment, they're just doing it in a very evil way, and no evil comes from God. So now you can imagine like all this talking is bringing a crowd, like people are gathering around to see what's going on. So the 3 people that came out on behalf of Hezekiah, they're basically trying to convince the spokesman to like, hey, let's keep this between us. Let's keep this conversation between us right here and not really blast it out to the rest of the people. So that's from verses 11 and 12. And of course the spokesman, he does not care. Like he wants to see them fail. So he's going to do anything in his power to make sure that happens. With that being said, we get to verses 13 to 20. So I wrote, the spokesman is being arrogant. After being told not to address the public, he did just that. His message was to make the people doubt not only their leaders, but also God. He compares God to the other unqualified gods, saying that if those gods couldn't protect them, how would the God of armies be able to do so? So all the points that the spokesman is trying to say, he's leading like, don't trust Hezekiah because of this. He's giving you false hope about the Lord and how the Lord will save you. And then he gives examples of where are these other gods that they used to worship and put their trust in. Like, so in verse 18, it says, "Beware that Hezekiah does not mislead you by saying, 'The Lord will rescue us.' Has any of the gods of the nations rescued his land from the power of the king of Assyria?" And then in verse 20, it says, "Who among all the gods of these lands ever rescued his land from my power? So will the Lord rescue Jerusalem from my power?" So like I said before, he's trying to put doubt into these people. He's trying to make them doubt the power that God has, and he's trying to make them doubt the leadership of Hezekiah, because they're like, okay, Hezekiah is telling us to follow the Lord, but are we sure that the Lord is going to actually show up? And from all this, we see the response of the people of Judah at the end of the chapter, verses 21 and 22. So I wrote, "Silence was their answer to the situation. Although nothing was said, the men were shaken up and went to report what was told." So verse 21 tells us how they were commanded to not answer this man. And then verse 22 tells us how the three men that were out there went to Hezekiah, and it says, "They came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and reported to him the words of the royal spokesman." I do want to add that my other study Bible mentions how the next 4 chapters are historical interludes, so we're just going to learn about what's going on with these battles. But that's the end of this chapter. That is all I have for you guys, and I will see you tomorrow for Isaiah chapter 37. I love y'all. God loves y'all more. Have a great night.